What you're about to hear may sound impossible, but it happened, and it changed everything. January 25th, 2024. A man is lying on a table in a small room. His name is Kenneth Eugene Smith. There are people watching him through windows. Everyone is quiet. Everyone is waiting. Kenneth is scared. His hands are shaking. The people watching look nervous too. Some of them have never seen anything like this before. Actually, nobody has. In a few minutes, Kenneth will become famous around the world, but for all the wrong reasons. What happens next will make doctors angry. It will make the news in every country. People will argue about it for years. Some will call it cruel. Others will say it was necessary. But nobody, and I mean nobody, saw this coming. So what exactly happened in that room? And why did it take 36 years to get there? Let me take you back to 1988. 1988 Alabama, a different world. Kenneth Smith was 22 years old, young, broke, and about to make the worst decision of his life. On March 18th, a woman named Elizabeth Sennett was found dead in her home. The police called it a burglary gone wrong. Her husband, a church pastor, was heartbroken. The whole town felt sorry for him, but something didn't add up. Elizabeth wasn't just killed during a robbery. She was murdered, and the person who wanted her dead was someone she trusted completely. This wasn't random violence. This was a plan. A cold, calculated plan that involved money, lies, and betrayal at the highest level. Kenneth Smith didn't know it yet, but he had just stepped into a story that would follow him for the next 36 years. A story that would end with him making history in the most terrible way possible. Now here's where the story gets really dark. And I need to warn you, what you're about to hear will make you question everything you think you know about trust, family, and justice. Before we go any deeper into this rabbit hole, I need to know something. Are you ready to hear a story that will keep you awake tonight? Because once you know what really happened to Elizabeth Sennett and how it connects to that room in 2024, you can't unknow it. If you're brave enough to go down this path with me, hit that subscribe button, because most people will never hear the full truth about what happened next. You see, Elizabeth Sennett thought she was safe that night. She had no idea that the plan to kill her had been months in the making. She didn't know that someone very close to her had already decided she had to die. Let me tell you about Elizabeth Sennett. She was 45 years old, a wife, a mother. She lived in a nice house in Colbert County, Alabama. Elizabeth loved her garden, went to church every Sunday, and trusted the people around her. She had no enemies, no one who wanted to hurt her. On March 18, 1988, Elizabeth came home from running errands. It was a normal Friday evening. She parked her car, walked her front door, and went inside. She would never walk out alive. The next morning, her body was found. She had been beaten and stabbed multiple times. The house looked like it had been robbed. Drawers pulled out, things scattered everywhere. The police took one look at the scene and said it was obvious. Burglary gone wrong. Someone broke in to steal. Elizabeth came home at the wrong time and they panicked. Case closed, right? Wrong. Because Elizabeth Sennett wasn't killed by some random burglar looking for quick cash. The truth was so much worse than that. Here's what the police didn't know at first, and what made this case so twisted. Elizabeth Sennett was worth more dead than alive. A lot more. See, Elizabeth had a life insurance policy, and it wasn't just any policy. We're talking about serious money here. The kind of money that could solve all your problems. The kind of money that could make someone do terrible things. But who would benefit from Elizabeth's death? Well, there was only one person who stood to collect that insurance payout. One person who knew about the policy. One person who had access to all of Elizabeth's personal information. Her husband. But here's the thing. Her husband wasn't just any regular guy. This wasn't some unemployed deadbeat looking for easy money. No, Elizabeth's husband was a respected member of the community. He was someone people looked up to, someone they trusted. Charles Sennett was a pastor, a man of God. He stood behind the pulpit every Sunday, preaching about love, forgiveness, and doing the right thing. And he was broke. Charles Sennett didn't just benefit from his wife's death. He planned it. The same man who held Elizabeth's hand in church. The same man who said, "Till death do us part," at their wedding. The same man who preached about love and marriage every Sunday. He hired someone to kill his own wife. Let that sink in for a second. While Elizabeth was at home, trusting her husband, making him dinner, sleeping next to him every night. He was planning her murder. He was talking to criminals. He was arranging for hitmen. He was deciding how much her life was worth. The insurance money? It was huge. We're talking about enough money to pay off all his debts and start over. Charles Sennett looked at his wife of many years and saw dollar signs. But here's what makes this even more sick. Charles didn't just hire one person. He hired multiple people to make sure the job got done right. One of those people was a 22-year-old kid who needed money. His name was Kenneth Eugene Smith. Kenneth Smith was broke, young, stupid, and desperate for quick money. When Charles Sennett came to him with an offer, Kenneth didn't ask too many questions. The pastor said he needed someone to take care of a problem. He offered $1,000 cash. To a 22-year-old with no money, that sounded like a fortune. Kenneth didn't know Elizabeth Sennett, had never met her. She was just a job to him. On that Friday night in March, Kenneth and another man broke into the Sennett house. The plan was simple. Make it look like a burglary, kill Elizabeth when she came home, and leave. But nothing went according to plan. When Elizabeth walked through her front door, what happened next was brutal. She was beaten with a fireplace tool, stabbed multiple times. She fought for her life, but she didn't stand a chance against two men. The house was torn apart to make it look like a robbery. Drawers dumped out, valuables scattered around. But they forgot one important thing. They took almost nothing. That's how the police eventually figured out this wasn't a real burglary. After Elizabeth's murder, it didn't take long for police to figure out what really happened. The fake burglary was sloppy. The insurance motive was obvious. And when they started investigating Charles Sennett, the whole plan fell apart. Kenneth Smith was arrested. So was his partner. So was the pastor who hired them. In 1989, Kenneth Smith was sentenced to death. He was 23 years old. Now imagine this. You're 23. Your whole life is ahead of you. But instead of planning your future, you're sitting in a 6 by 8 foot cell, waiting to die. Day after day, month after month, year after year. 1990 came and went. Kenneth was still alive. 1995 came and went. Kenneth was still alive. 2000 came and went. Kenneth was still alive. The appeals kept coming. His lawyers filed papers. Courts made decisions. More appeals, more papers, more waiting. Kenneth watched other inmates get executed. He watched new inmates arrive. He saw men go crazy from the waiting. Some gave up hope completely, but Kenneth kept fighting. His legal team never stopped working. As one of his lawyers said, "Every day on death row is a day you might die, but it's also a day you might live." The psychological toll was crushing. Imagine knowing that any day could be your last, but not knowing which day, for 33 years. Then came November 17th, 2022. November 17th, 2022. After 33 years on death row, Kenneth Smith's time was finally up. The execution chamber at Holman Prison. Cold, sterile, bright white lights everywhere. Kenneth is walked in wearing a white jumpsuit. His hands are shaking. They strap him down to the same table where dozens of men had died before him. The witnesses take their seats behind the glass. Everything is ready, but then something goes wrong. The medical team tries to put the IV needle in Kenneth's arm. They poke. They try again and again. Kenneth's veins are hard to find. Maybe it's his age. Maybe it's the stress. Maybe it's just bad luck. 1 hour passes. The needle still won't go in right. 2 hours pass. Kenneth is still alive, still strapped to the table, watching them try to kill him. The witnesses are getting uncomfortable. This isn't supposed to take this long. Executions are supposed to be quick, clean, professional. After 4 hours of trying, something unthinkable happens. They give up. Kenneth Smith walked out of that execution chamber alive. Let me repeat that. He survived his own execution. Think about that for a second. Imagine lying on a table for 4 hours, knowing people are trying to kill you and they can't do it. You watch them fail over and over again. You hear them talking about your veins like you're not even human. Then they just untie you and walk you back to your cell. What does that do to your mind? Kenneth's lawyer said something that still gives me chills. He lived through his own execution. How do you come back from that? How do you sleep at night knowing they tried to kill you and failed? Legally, this created a huge problem. Can you execute someone twice? Is that cruel and unusual punishment? The courts had never dealt with this before. But Alabama wasn't giving up. If lethal injection didn't work, they would find another way. That's when they decided to try something that had never been done before. Something experimental. Something that would make Kenneth Smith famous around the world. Nitrogen gas. Kenneth's lawyers immediately filed emergency appeals. They argued something that had never been argued before. You cannot execute a man twice. The state already tried and failed. To try again is cruel and unusual punishment. Alabama fought back hard. Their legal team said, the sentence is death, not attempted death. Until Kenneth Smith is dead, justice hasn't been served. This created a legal nightmare. No court had ever dealt with this before. Can a state keep trying until they succeed? Where's the line? Can you imagine surviving your own execution? The psychological trauma alone. If this case is already getting under your skin like it did mine, smash that like button. We're about to go even deeper into territory no human should have to explore. While the courts battled, Alabama was already planning something radical. They weren't going to risk another failed execution. They were going to try a method that had never been used on any human being in history. Alabama's new plan had a scientific name, nitrogen hypoxia. Here's how it works in simple terms. Right now, you're breathing air that's about 78% nitrogen and 21% oxygen. Your body needs that oxygen to stay alive. Nitrogen hypoxia means forcing someone to breathe 100% pure nitrogen, zero oxygen. What happens next? Your body uses up the oxygen that's already in your blood. But when you breathe in, you're only getting nitrogen. No new oxygen comes in. Within minutes, you lose consciousness. Your brain shuts down. Your heart stops. Alabama said this would be peaceful, like falling asleep. No pain, no struggle, just lights out. They claimed it was the most humane execution method ever invented. But here's the first red flag. Alabama got this idea from studying suicide cases. People who accidentally died from breathing pure nitrogen in industrial accidents. Think about that. They were basing their humane execution method on accident reports and suicide studies. Not exactly the kind of research you'd want for something this serious. So why did Alabama pick nitrogen gas? Simple. They were desperate. Remember Kenneth Smith's failed execution? That 4-hour nightmare where they couldn't get the foreign? That wasn't just embarrassing for Alabama. It was a legal disaster. Lethal injection was supposed to be foolproof. Quick, clean, professional, but it failed spectacularly. Even worse, drug companies were refusing to sell execution drugs anymore. The European companies that made the drugs didn't want their products used for executions. So states like Alabama were running out of options. Electric chair? Too old-fashioned and brutal-looking. Gas chamber? Bad historical connections. Firing squad? Too violent for most people. Nitrogen seemed perfect. It was cheap, easy to get, and Alabama claimed it would be peaceful. Plus, here's the key part. Nitrogen gas couldn't fail the way lethal injection did. You don't need to find veins. You don't need needles. You just put a mask on someone's face and turn on the gas. Alabama thought they had found the perfect solution to their Kenneth Smith problem. They were about to find out they were wrong. Here's the most shocking part about Alabama's nitrogen plan. Are you ready for this? They had never tested it on a human being. Not once. Ever. Think about that. When you take a new medicine, it's tested on thousands of people first. When you buy a new car, it's crash tested hundreds of times. But Alabama was about to use Kenneth Smith as their first and only test case. Their research came from 3 sources: industrial accident reports, suicide cases, animal studies. That's it. That was their scientific basis for calling it humane. One doctor said, "They're basically saying we think this will work peacefully, but we've never tried it. Kenneth Smith will find out for all of us." No medical trials. No studies on whether it actually causes pain. No data on how long it takes. No research on what the person experiences. Alabama was asking the courts to approve a completely experimental execution method. They wanted to turn Kenneth Smith into a science experiment. And that's when the experts started getting really angry. When the world found out about Alabama's nitrogen plan, the reaction was explosive. The United Nations called it potential torture. UN human rights experts said Alabama was about to cross a line that should never be crossed. Medical professionals around the globe were horrified. The American Medical Association said there was no way to know if nitrogen execution would be painless. European countries threatened to cut ties with Alabama. International human rights groups filed emergency appeals. One UN expert said, "Alabama is about to conduct a medical experiment on a living human being without his consent." That's the definition of torture. Kenneth's lawyers were fighting in every court they could find. Federal courts, state courts, appeals courts, even the Supreme Court. The legal battles were intense. Emergency filings, last-minute appeals, judges making life or death decisions in hours. The courts were about to make a decision that would change everything. But before we get to that final night, I need you to help me reach more people with these important stories. Hit that notification bell, because what happens next will shock you. January 25th, 2024, Kenneth Smith's final day on Earth. He wakes up in his cell at 6 a.m., just like he has for the past 35 years. But this morning is different. Everyone knows it. The guards know it. The other inmates know it. Kenneth knows it. This is the last time he'll see sunrise. How would you spend your last day alive? What would matter to you in those final hours? Kenneth takes a shower. He puts on clean clothes. He tries to eat breakfast, but his stomach is too nervous. The food tastes like nothing. At 10 a.m., his family arrives. His wife, his children, people who have watched him age behind bars for decades. They sit in a small room, separated by glass. They talk through phones. His wife tries not to cry, but the tears come anyway. What do you say to someone you'll never see again? I love you. I'm sorry. Don't forget me. They talk about good memories. They avoid talking about tonight. At 2 p.m., the visit ends. Kenneth watches his family walk away for the last time. At 4 p.m., they bring Kenneth his final meal, his last taste of food on earth. He ordered T-bone steak with A1 steak sauce, hash browns, eggs over easy, toast with butter, simple food, comfort food, the kind of meal that reminds you of being a kid when life was easier and death seemed impossible. Kenneth cuts into the steak. It's perfectly cooked, but does it matter now? He chews slowly, trying to make it last. The A1 sauce is tangy and familiar. The hash browns are crispy on the outside, soft inside. But everything tastes different when you know it's the last time. What would you eat for your last meal? Something fancy? Something from your childhood? Something that reminds you of happy times? Kenneth finishes about half the plate. His appetite is gone. The food sits heavy in his stomach. At 6 p.m., they take the tray away. Kenneth will never eat again. Outside his cell, the final legal appeals are failing one by one. While Kenneth sits in his cell, his lawyers are fighting for his life in courtrooms across the country. 6:30 p.m., Alabama Supreme Court. Denied. 6:45 p.m., Federal Appeals Court. Denied. 7 p.m., U.S. Supreme Court. Denied. Each denial brings Kenneth one step closer to that execution chamber. His legal team is running out of options, running out of time. 7:15 p.m., the warden walks to Kenneth's cell. It's time. Kenneth stands up slowly. His legs feel weak. His hands are shaking slightly. This is it. This is really happening. In just minutes, Kenneth Eugene Smith will become the first person in human history to be executed by nitrogen gas. The first, ever. No one knows what will happen. No one knows if it will work the way Alabama claims. No one knows if Kenneth will suffer. This is an experiment. Kenneth is the test subject. He walks down the hallway toward the execution chamber. Each step takes him closer to making history. The kind of history no one wants to make. The execution chamber is small. White walls, bright lights, a table in the center with leather straps. Kenneth is led to the table. The guards are quiet, professional. They've done this before, but never like this. They strap Kenneth down. Arms, legs, chest. He can't move now. Then comes a mask. It looks like something a pilot would wear. Blue and black plastic. They place it over his face carefully. Kenneth can feel it pressing against his skin. The rubber seal around his nose and mouth. He can hear his own breathing inside the mask. Fast, nervous. Before they turn on the gas, Kenneth speaks his final words. Tonight, Alabama causes humanity to take a step backwards. I'm leaving with love, peace, and light. Think about that. Even facing death by an untested method, he talks about love and peace. 7:57 p.m. The nitrogen gas begins to flow. Kenneth Eugene Smith is about to become the first person in history to die this way. The nitrogen gas flows into Kenneth's mask. Pure nitrogen. No oxygen. For the first few minutes, Kenneth appears conscious. He can be seen moving slightly. His chest rises and falls. Witnesses watch through the glass, not knowing what to expect. This has never been done before. They're all watching an experiment. Kenneth's body begins to shake. Some witnesses later said it looked like he was having convulsions. Others said he appeared to be struggling. Alabama had promised this would be peaceful, like falling asleep. This didn't look peaceful. 22 minutes after the gas started flowing, Kenneth Eugene Smith was pronounced dead at 8:25 p.m. The first nitrogen gas execution in human history was complete. Kenneth Smith had just become a test case, a guinea pig, the first person to die by a method that had never been tried before. The experiment was over, but the controversy was just beginning. Within hours of Kenneth Smith's death, the world exploded with reactions. The United Nations released a statement calling the execution deeply disturbing. UN experts at Alabama had just conducted a medical experiment on a living human being without consent. Medical professionals worldwide were horrified. One doctor in Germany said, "What Alabama did tonight will be remembered as a dark moment in human rights history." European countries threatened to review their relationships with states that use experimental execution methods. But there was another side to the story. Elizabeth Sennett's family had waited 36 years for justice. Her son said, "Kenneth Smith got what he deserved. My mother didn't choose how she died, but at least her killer faced justice." Here was an impossible contradiction at the heart of this case. One family finally had closure after decades of waiting. But the method used to deliver that justice shocked the world and potentially opened the door to a new era of experimental executions. Kenneth Smith's death satisfied some, but horrified others. Kenneth Smith's death didn't end anything. It started something. Alabama's Attorney General immediately announced they want to help other states adopt nitrogen gas executions. Oklahoma, Mississippi, and Louisiana are already looking into it. The Alabama method could become the new standard for capital punishment in America. Think about that. What happened to Kenneth Smith on January 25th, 2024 might happen to hundreds more people. An untested, experimental method could become routine. Kenneth Smith's case forces us to ask impossible questions. Where do we draw the line between justice and cruelty? How far should we go in the name of punishment? Is there such a thing as a humane way to kill someone? When does seeking justice become conducting medical experiments? Kenneth Eugene Smith will be remembered as the first, the test case, the man who survived one execution only to become the guinea pig for another. His death changed capital punishment forever. So here we are. Kenneth Eugene Smith is dead. Elizabeth Sennett's family finally has closure after 36 years. And the world is divided about what just happened. Some people say justice was served. A killer paid the ultimate price for his crime. Others say Alabama just tortured a man to death using an untested method. What do you think? Was this justice or was this cruelty? Should states be allowed to experiment with new execution methods? Where's the line between punishment and torture? Kenneth Smith's story doesn't end with his death. It begins a new chapter in American justice. If this case made you think differently about capital punishment, or if you believe more people need to know about this historic moment, then help me share this story. Subscribe, share this video, and let me know in the comments. Do you think nitrogen gas executions will become the new normal? Your voice matters in this conversation about justice, humanity, and where we draw the lines. Because Kenneth Smith's legacy is still being written.